Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to do my December reading wrap up, which I can't believe that it's finally time to do the last wrap up of the year. I had a pretty good reading month. I read 9 books in total in December, which is a lot more than I was expecting to get in. And I actually stuck to the TBR that I made in November, which I never stick to my TBRs. So this was a big accomplishment for me. We started off the month pretty rough, but we ended really, really strong. I'm very happy with the books that I did end up reading in the last half of the month. So let's go over every book that I read and what I thought about them. I started the month off reading Leech by Hiran Ennis. I probably am butchering that name, but unfortunately, this book was also butchered in my opinion. This book is a very dark, gothic sci-fi novel set in a post-apocalyptic world in an isolated chateau where a doctor has died under very mysterious circumstances, and a replacement doctor is sent to go live at the chateau and kind of figure out what happened and keep serving, the people that live there. And while he's there, he discovers a parasite while he's performing an autopsy on the body. So it kind of becomes a mystery of figuring out what the parasite is, how it got there, and how to stop it before it kills everybody in the chateau. This book had a really great premise, and I was really excited to see how it would be executed, but I found this book wildly confusing, just really, really hard to follow from page one, and it never got any easier to follow, and there wasn't a lot of payoff for me. The writing was good, but when you have kind of a more lyrical prose and a really confusing concept, I just end up frustrated because I don't know what's going on, and this book just really suffered from a very confusing plot, poor pacing. This book was just so drawn out and so boring. I couldn't connect to really any of the characters either. And because of that, I didn't really care what happened to them. And then the ending got really dark. Definitely check trigger warnings for this book if you do read it, because I really was not expecting some of the scenes and topics that were really graphically introduced right at the end of the book. I overall just really did not enjoy my time with this. It had a great atmosphere, which was fun, but that was really the only redeeming quality for me. Really cool concept, not good execution. And I did give this 1.5 stars, I believe. The next book I read is The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. I gave this book 2 stars. This book follows the story of a village that is full of a lot of really weird people back in the day. And one day they just all go missing, except for a newborn baby and a murdered body in the town square. Years later, there's a woman who is trying to kind of make it big in the filmmaking and documentary industry, and she's really interested in the story of this lost village. And so she and a group of her friends go visit this place, and really weird and spooky things start happening as they try to uncover the secrets of what happened. This book had again a really good premise, but once more I found the execution really, really lacking. This book kind of did that thing where there's a lot of fake outs with the spooky things. It's like, oh, there's a ghost and we're scared and what's going on? Oh, it was just my friend. And that happened so many times. And I really hate when authors do that. I want you to just commit to something spooky actually happening, or don't do the fake outs at all. So I was feeling frustrated with that. I found every single character in this book insufferable and so annoying and very immature. The parts that I did like about this book, it's split POV and split timelines. So we're getting chapters from the present day, but we're also jumping back in time to when the village was still going strong. And this book does end up taking a rather culty turn, which I did really enjoy that. I don't think that's really a spoiler. I don't even recommend this book anyway, so I'm just going to let you know. This does end up with culty themes, which I really did enjoy that. But everything else, I just genuinely was so bored and I did not care at all. So 2 stars for this one. The next book I picked up is Alice Feeney's new book, Beautiful Ugly. I gave this book 5 stars, which was so surprising because Alice Feeney is really hit or miss for me. This book was so spooky and eerie and dark and so twisty. I just had the best time with it. I binged it in 24 hours because it left me no other choice. I would like to put a disclaimer out there that if I rate a thriller 5 stars, that is not me saying that this is like a great piece of literature or anything. My rating system for thrillers is so different than any other genre. Really, if they just have good twists, good atmosphere, and decent writing, and also like some commentary, something to say, you're going to get a 5 stars from me. And this book checked off all those boxes. This book opens up with a man who is celebrating that he just became a New York Times bestselling author. And he calls his wife, who's on her way home from work, to celebrate and share the good news. And she pulls over on the side of the road because something is laying in the middle of the road and she doesn't know what it is. And against her husband's wishes for her to just stay in the car, she goes and checks it out anyways. And then she disappears and is never seen again until about a year later. This author takes a little writing retreat. He's suffering with grief and writer's block, and he says, you know what, I'm just going to go to this Scottish island and just stay there for a few weeks, write my book, see if inspiration strikes. And that is when he runs into a woman that looks just like his missing wife. And things just go crazy from there. This island is so atmospheric and creepy. The people who live on this island are so just spooky and scary. And it's like they all know something. And us as the reader and the main character have no idea what's going on. It was so much fun. Highly recommend. After that, I picked up, I believe the next book I read was called Blood Like Mine by Stuart Neville. I gave this book a 3 stars. This is like a true crime feel, but also has a thriller and horror element to it as well. This book follows a mother-daughter duo who they are on the run. You don't really know from who or why or what they've done, but you know that they're kind of suspicious. And then we're also getting the point of view of a detective who is kind of like following their tracks and is trying to figure out what is going on with them. I know that sounds very ambiguous, but really the first half of this book, you have no idea what's really going on. And it's like this wild cat and mouse chase that's very thrilling and fast paced and engaging. And then at the 50% mark, it takes a speculative horror twist that I found extremely interesting and fun, but it kind of took like the seriousness of this novel like away from me, and it just became a silly, fun horror speculative time. I think if that sounds interesting to you, then definitely give this book a try. It was something fun and fast-paced to read, something unique, but there were parts of it that I did find kind of cringy, but the ending was also really good. So 3 stars. I then picked up Model Home by Rivers Solomon. This book is about a group of siblings who, growing up in their home, they live in this rich white neighborhood and they are the only Black family there. The house that they live in is haunted, basically, and it's a very traumatizing experience. And so they basically all move away as adults as quickly as possible. And then their parents die in very odd circumstances, and it brings them all back home, all back to this house to figure out what happened to their parents. But the hauntings didn't stop and these weird things keep happening. This book was not what I expected, but I still really enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. This book was very dark and very emotional. The end of this book truly shocked me, but it wasn't like a typical popcorn thriller where it's just like, ooh, the twist got me. It's like, yeah, the twist got me, and I was crying and I felt deeply disturbed and disgusted, but I think it was done with so much taste. It was done so well. I really enjoyed this author's writing as I got to the last half of the novel. It was really hard for me to get into at first because I've never read from this author before, and they have very lyrical prose. It's very poetic, and there were parts of it that I really, really enjoyed. And then other times it made it a little bit harder for me to be invested in the actual plot. But another plus side of it is I was extremely connected to these characters. I cared so much about them. They felt so real and so vivid, and I loved reading about their experiences and the complex family dynamics between parents and children and siblings and so much more than that. It truly was very beautiful, but also very dark and disturbing. I would say if you do enjoy a more unique writing style, this is definitely one worth checking out. Then I picked up I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. This book I've heard so much about, but I didn't really know much, aside from the fact that it is pitched as a dystopian novel where 40 women are kept in an underground bunker with no memory or recollection of how they got there or really of their lives before that. That's really all you need to know going into this book. It's not necessarily about that, though. Like, this book feels plotless in a way. This book feels very philosophical. The writing is absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, very impactful. This book is about so many hard-hitting themes and topics. It's about human condition and about society and how societal expectations and pressures shape and mold us into the people that we are and into how we live our lives. I'm being really vague because I think it's best to go in as blind as possible to this book and just let it take you on the journey that it wants to take you on. I will say, and this might be mild spoilers. I don't think it is, but it might be. So skip ahead a little bit if you don't want to know anything more about this book. But I would say around the 50% mark of this book, I realized that we're not going to get any answers. And you really don't get any answers. You start this book wondering what is going on? How did they get here? Why are things the way they are? And you're never going to find out. And that was starting to really deeply bother me when I read this book. By the end, I didn't care anymore. I really didn't care that I didn't know. I didn't care that I had no answers and that I almost had more questions than answers. And I think that's the desired effect. And I think the main character that you're in her perspective goes through the same experience. And you're really like so deeply like in her mind and in her thoughts and emotions. The author puts you in this story and in the emotions and the experiences of these characters so well. I think it's just such an amazing and beautiful and tragic story. It's very short. There's no chapters. It's quick and easy to get through, but it is heavy. But I would highly recommend this. Absolutely. It's going to make you think. It's going to make you emotional. It's going to make you angry. It'll make you laugh. It will make you cry. It's going to take you through a lot and you're going to like it. I promise. It's a 4-star read. Okay, next I read Under Her Care by Lucinda Berry. I'm trying to read all of the books from this author that I have not read yet, and I'm almost there. So this was the next one I picked up. This book opens up with a very gruesome scene where the mayor's wife in this town in Louisiana has been brutally murdered. A teenage boy who is diagnosed with autism is found with blood all over him at the scene of the crime. So obviously, we think that it's him who did it, but why and what happened? You're getting the point of view of a woman who's kind of taken on to help the detectives and the police with this case, who works with children with autism and other disorders. And you're getting the point of view of the son's mother. And this book was so, so good. I thought the pacing in this was incredible. I thought it was really thrilling and fast paced. And then in true Lucinda Berry fashion, the end, the twist really got me. But like she always does, it had this really dark but also very emotional turn at the end. It was hard hitting. It was well executed. I really enjoyed my time with this one. I gave it 4 stars if I didn't say that already. We're down to the last 2 books that I read this year. I'm not even ready to talk about this. I read The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. I gave this the easiest and most deserving 5 stars of all time. This is the 3rd book in the Poppy War trilogy. They were my favorite books that I read this year, and this one takes the cake for my favorite book of 2024. It left me no other choice. I can't say a lot about what this book is about, obviously, but the Poppy War is such a famous trilogy. I'm sure you probably already know the vibes. On a extremely broad level, this is a military fantasy. Our main character is a war orphan named Rin who has everything going against her. And this book, this series takes you on the most insane, most dark and devastating, brutal journey. R.F. Kuang and her writing, she is just masterful. She is so skilled. I've never read such complex characters in my life. I've never been more torn about how to feel about these characters, but I've also never loved characters like I love these characters. And I am not even in a place where I can adequately give a review of this book because I'm still reeling from the experience of reading these books. I had my life just ruined and devastated when I finished this book. If you've read this series, you know the pain that I'm going through. The end of this book is so just shocking, but it also makes so much sense once you read it. And it's just so devastating. This whole trilogy is absolutely devastating, not only because how much you're invested in the story, but because it's based on so many real life events. And R.F. Kuang really set out in this book and in this trilogy to show you the brutality and the devastation and the true horrors of war. She does not shy away from that reality, and it's extremely graphic. It's brutal, but I think it's so important to have books like these to highlight so many relevant issues and topics about humanity and about history, and how the cycles of history repeating themselves over and over really never stop. Yeah, I love Ren, our main character, and I hate Ren, but I love her, and this was just the most incredible trilogy that I've ever read, and I feel like nothing's ever going to top this ever again. Please read The Poppy War in 2025 if you have not. I somehow managed to squeeze one more book in. I read this entire book yesterday. I thought The Burning God was going to be my last read of the year, but something possessed me to pick up Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. Oh, this book. Where to even start? This book is best if you go in blind, but just know that it has every single trigger warning in the history of ever in this book. So just, bear that in mind. Don't be fooled by the cutesy little cover of this book. This is probably one of the most disturbing. No, it is. This is really one of the most disturbing and unsettling books I have ever read in my life. But it was done so well. It was executed beautifully and with so much taste. Essentially is about a young girl who believes herself to be an alien dropped onto Earth into her family, and she's trying to find her way back to her home planet. She has a cousin who also believes the same thing, and the two of them bond over that and are trying to just survive through their time on Earth to get back to their home planet. That's the basic premise, and that's also the least weird part of this entire book. You really just have to let this book take you on the journey it wants to take you on, and I personally love that as a reader. I loved going into this book not really knowing anything other than what I just told you, but it also was very, very jarring. It says on the front, there's a little blurb that just says startling. This book is very startling. It's jarring. It's disgusting. There's a lot of really gruesome scenes that are going to turn your stomach and make you very upset, but it's done with a purpose. I have never read a book that describes and shows you and makes you feel out of body experiences, or what it's like to disassociate because of trauma. This book captures that in a way that I have never seen done before, and I think is absolutely incredible and takes so much skill. This book really is about trauma and the effects of trauma on children and people in general, and the coping mechanisms that your brain just kind of takes on to protect you, and what happens if you never really address those coping mechanisms and figure out how to stop them before they take over your life. It truly is an incredible book. It is so weird. It was so strange. I gave it 4.5 stars. This might actually be a 5-star read. I'm kind of still sitting with it since I did just read it last night, but I did read this in one sitting. It left me no other choice. I just had to read the entire thing, and that's how you know a book is so, so good. And I already want to read this again. Like, is something wrong with me? Am I okay? I feel like if anyone that I actually know in real life read this book per my recommendation, I would ask them to please not do that, because I feel like they would try to send me to a mental hospital and ask me if I'm okay. Like, seriously, would be worried for my well-being. So yeah, this is not a book that I would probably go around recommending to people, like, here, read this book. I think this is a book that people need to naturally kind of like find on their own and decide if it's something that they feel like they need to read or want to read. Just be prepared for the craziest and most wild journey of your entire life with this book. If that tells you anything about how much I did enjoy this book, enjoy feels like the wrong word, but I really liked this book. I very much appreciated it, and I really liked the weirdness of it overall. Okay, so those are all of the books that I read in December. The fact that we had so many 4 and potentially 5-star reads at the end of this month is, I couldn't ask for anything more to end out my reading year. I think I'm really starting to get closer to nailing down my true reading taste. In 2024, I read very broadly when it comes to genres and authors, and I think the last half of this year especially, I've been picking up a lot more books that I'm rating more highly, and I'm noticing more themes in the authors that I want to read more of and the genres that I really enjoy. So I'm really hoping that in 2025 I read more quality books over quantity. That's really going to be my focus. So I'm really excited to see, what the next reading year is going to look like. But with that, that is the last wrap up of 2024, which is crazy. I know I haven't posted any wrap ups on this channel, but all of my other yearly wrap ups are on my TikTok in case you're interested in that. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to all of the books that I read. If you've read any of these, let me know what you thought of them. If you had any 5-star reads or 1-star reads that you just want to talk about and get off your chest, let me know in the comments. I love to chit chat and yap about books, clearly. But until next time, I will see you in 2025.